Hope is a fleeting commodity. However, the NFL Draft provides each and every team with a glimmer of prosperity for the future. Jason Cole is an NFL writer for BleacherReport.com. He joined me on Thursday to tell me which teams hit it out of the park and which teams still have more work to do following the NFL's annual talent selection spectacular. Okay, Jason, so first of all, we wanted to take the time to welcome you to the Two Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to recap the draft with you this morning.
No problem. Good to be here.
So, can you just start off by telling me what are your general impressions of what we saw over the weekend in Philadelphia?
Well, I think my general impressions are that the NFL does an amazing job of getting people excited over nothing. The draft process is really sort of much ado about no action. It's like they're just sitting there at tables calling out the names of players, but they've turned this into a television show that people, watch more than ever before, and that 70 to 100,000 people show up to watch. If for no other reason than to boo the commissioner. But this event, when I first started covering the NFL back in the 1990s, this event was done with no television coverage, essentially. And now they've turned it into a TV event. And the fact that it's become this much always kind of staggers me. It annoys me in some ways, but it kind of staggers me. So I give the NFL a lot of credit for that.
Well, it's becoming a spectacle. There's no doubt about it. Can you also tell me about your thoughts about this quarterback class? Certainly, it was one of the most underwhelming quarterback classes we've seen in a while. But if you watched the draft, and I'm sure you did, you saw that we had three teams trade up within the top 10 to get quarterbacks. So, a two-part question for you. Can you tell me your general impressions about this quarterback class and whether you think any of these quarterbacks will be franchise difference makers?
Well, I hope they are, first of all. Let me start with that, because you do this because you want to watch great players. I mean, I became a sports writer because I wanted to see great athletic achievement. But I will say this, I have huge doubts about these three guys, Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, and Patrick Mahomes, because I do believe they were overdrafted. I am talking to Jordan Palmer. This is the brother of Carson Palmer, who kicked around the league for 5 or 6 years. And himself, one of the things that he talked about is that the amount of material that spread quarterbacks in particular know coming out of the college ranks, like what they understand about quarterbacking decreases year by year, because spread offenses don't ask the quarterback to know that much. In fact, they don't ask them to call plays. They don't ask them to really call audibles. They don't ask a lot of those guys. But what the NFL asks of quarterbacks increases every year. So you have this sort of, these two lines that are dividing, increasingly, and creating this huge gap of knowledge between what a college quarterback knows and what he needs to know to be successful in the NFL. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but just the act of calling a play in the huddle, repeating it back, that was a very difficult thing for Jared Goff to do last year. And classically, Jared Goff is a spread quarterback. It's a hard thing to go from the huddle and communicating that information and convincing your players that the play is actually going to work, to now gain to the line of scrimmage, seeing what the defense is doing to you, having to adjust to what the defense does, and then calling a play, making a change, doing an audible, figuring it all out, and then now you have to finally execute the play. So to me, none of those guys have done that. And when that makes this a huge wild card to me of whether it's actually going to work. I actually think that Watson has the best chance because I think he's A, very, very smart, and I think B, he's a great problem solver. I think he's the kind of guy who wants to figure problems out. He's a guy who wants to try and see what can be done. And so I give him the best chance of this, but I don't like any of them from that perspective. What I do like is their athletic ability. I think they're all accomplished when it comes to athletic prowess. So they all have that going for them. But boy, this is a big risk. And it's a big risk at a time when the NFL desperately needs to have more young quarterbacks coming into the league, filling in for some of the older guys who are either retiring already, Peyton Manning and Tony Romo, or who are about to retire in the next few years, such as a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady or a Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, this is one of the greatest quarterbacking eras, and it's about to come to an end.
And when we look at the top 10, since you've been covering the draft, is this the most unpredictable top 10 you've seen?
I don't know. I think we have that emotional most of greatest thing we've ever seen, because we sort of tend to forget the ones of the past,
mm-hmm.
and our memories fade a little bit. I haven't gone back and looked over a lot of things, but I remember the 2006 draft when everybody thought that Reggie Bush was going number 1 overall to Houston, and then at the last minute they flipped and went with Mario Williams. So people might have said that. So there's a fair number of things that happen. The draft in which Bryant McKinney was passed over by Minnesota initially, and all of a sudden you had teams like Baltimore rushing in to make picks while Minnesota was fumbling around with their draft pick. You've had situations like that. Excuse me. So there's been some crazy stuff to happen in the draft. The fact that Eli Manning refused to play for the San Diego Chargers at the last minute, that was somewhat unpredictable. So there have been some other ones. This one, however, there was, obviously the number 1 pick was sort of as expected. That played out by chalk. And then things got exciting with the number 2 pick. And that made it a little bit different from recent ones. And then the fact that the wide receivers went a lot higher than everybody thought, that changed it a little bit. So I think this one ranks up right up there with some of the most unpredictable.
And when you look at general managers who stuck their neck out, in your opinion, which general manager needs these draft picks the most to pan out to prove that their vision for their respective team is the right one?
Well, obviously Ryan Pace. He put the most out there, going from 3 to 2. And now that's been done before. Bobby Beathard famously did it when he was in San Diego, traded up with Arizona, went and got Ryan Leaf, and that didn't work, and that was essentially the end of Bobby Beathard's career as a general manager, although he was a great general manager for a long time. I think Ryan Pace is right up there. I think, John Dorsey in Kansas City, because they have an existing quarterback. With Alex Smith there, in Kansas City, who's only 33 years old. He's not that old yet. But I think that it's become clear that they acknowledge that Alex Smith is not good enough to take them the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got to get to Pat Mahomes as soon as they can. I don't think it's going to be this year, but it's going to be sooner than later, because they need a guy with better arm talent, or they need somebody with great arm talent, which is what Mahomes has, to really push Alex Smith as hard as they can to see if they can get Alex Smith to take advantage of the great defense that they have built.
And we cover the Lions a lot here on this show, so I'm wondering if you can give me just a general thumbnail on what you thought Detroit did during the draft.
Well, I love Jerry Davis in the first round. I actually live in Gainesville, Florida. I'm not a University of Florida graduate. I'm not even really a fan of the University of Florida, but I live here and I know the kid. And he's as good a human being as you'll find. He is what people call a culture changer, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that pick. At Tease Tabor in the second round, I just worry about guys who can't run, and especially at that position when you don't have recovery speed. But he's a tough kid. He'll get up in people's faces. I think that'll work very well when you have to face off against Green Bay, when you have to play against Kevin White. I think he works within the division, but I get a little bit freaked out by recovery speed. I think Galladay in the third round is a fine pick. He's going to have to make a huge jump, but a good player. And then after that, you're talking about, basically from the fourth round down, you're talking about a crapshoot most of the time. I do like the Michael Roberts kick quite a bit. I thought he tested very well. But I think other than that, you're looking at guys who are, it's the usual role of the dice to see whether they're special teams players or whether they're, really, significant contributors, or if you get a long shot once in a while, is that guy going to play out and become a serious talent and a serious starter?
And my final question for you, Jason, has to do with, do you think there were any common threads or trends that we can take away from this draft?
Yeah, this is one that I sent, and that is that, we talked about the quarterbacks, and taking a quarterback, and especially trading up the way that these teams did. You saw Houston give up, and Kansas City give up first-round picks in the future to move up for those guys. And then add in the selection of Gary and Conley at number 24 by Oakland, and then throw in Joe Mixon in the second round, right? Those are four high-profile, high-risk picks. Now, they're risks for different reasons. The quarterbacks are risks just in and of themselves because the fluctuation and success rate of quarterbacks is so poor, because it's the hardest position in football. It's the hardest position in all sports to play. Then you're talking about the personality risk, or not necessarily personality, but the history of conduct by Conley is really a good kid before this, doesn't have any blemishes on his past, but when you're accused of sexual assault, this is a very serious thing. And then obviously everybody knows about Joe Mixon. Those are four really high picks. They're all in the top 50 the teams used. And I think that what you're seeing is the financial constraints that used to go with taking a guy in the high in the draft. It used to be you were making an investment and you were stuck with that guy for 3, maybe 4 years under the old cap system. I'm not saying that the cap system has changed significantly, but the way that they've held down rookie salaries relative to how big the cap is now, it makes it cheap for you to take a guy even in the first or the second round. Those guys are not that costly. And as a result, you're not worried about the money anymore. You're just worried about the player, and you're saying, okay, we're going to take the best player on the board. We're not going to worry about the cash because we can go and find somebody else to replace that guy. We can get a free agent somewhere down the line if this guy doesn't pan out. And I think that allows teams to take risks that they might not otherwise take, especially when it comes to Conley, especially when it comes to Mixon. Because I think in the case of both those teams, they have to be willing to say, we're going to cut a first or a second round pick within a year if this thing goes wrong.
Jason, we want to take the time to thank you for your insight and for recapping the NFL draft with us this morning on the Two Man Advantage podcast. We want to thank you for your time and wish you a good day there, buddy.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.